The wind tasted like copper and old mistakes. Clara stood at the property line where Mercer's ranch began, staring at a house that looked like it had been beaten into submission by the same sun that was currently trying to kill her. Her boots, worn down to almost nothing, had given up pretending to be waterproof about 50 miles back. The blisters underneath had their own blisters now. She'd stopped counting days ago. Time became irrelevant when you were running on fumes and the last of your courage. 3 months. That's how long it had been since the bank took everything. The farm her father built, the land her mother's grave rested on. The future she'd stupidly believed was guaranteed. Gone. Auctioned off to men in clean suits who'd never worked a day with their hands, who signed papers that destroyed lives between sips of expensive whiskey. She'd tried. God, she'd tried everything. Went to town looking for work. Any work. But a woman alone, without family, without references? The shopkeepers looked through her like glass. The hotel owner laughed in her face. The only offers she got were the kind that made her skin crawl, the kind that came with hands that lingered too long and smiles that promised nothing good. So she'd walked west, because west was where desperate people went when east ran out of options. She'd heard rumors in the last town, some rancher out on the frontier, successful enough to need help, isolated enough not to ask too many questions. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all she had. The house was bigger than she expected. 2 stories, wraparound porch, built from timber that had probably cost more than most people made in a year. But there was something off about it. The windows were clean, the structure sound, but it felt empty, abandoned almost, like a body without a soul. She made herself walk forward. Each step hurt, her feet, her pride, her sense of who she used to be. The woman who'd left that farm 3 months ago wouldn't recognize the person trudging up this drive. That woman had standards. This one just needed to not die. A man emerged from the barn before she reached the porch. Tall, maybe 40, with the kind of shoulders you got from actual labor. His face was weathered in a way that spoke of years under an unforgiving sun. Lines carved deep around eyes that didn't seem to miss much. Dark hair, gray starting at the temples. He moved like someone who'd learned not to waste energy on unnecessary motion. Lost? His voice matched his appearance. Rough, direct, no warmth in it. Looking for work. Her own voice came out raspier than intended. When had she last had water? Yesterday? Heard you might be hiring. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, that flat, assessing gaze taking in every detail. The ruined boots, the dress that had been mended so many times it was more thread than original fabric. The way she was swaying slightly on her feet, too proud to sit down without permission, but too exhausted to stand straight. You look half dead. Only half, she said. Still got the other half that knows how to work. Something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement. Maybe respect, or at least recognition of stubbornness that matched his own. You know anything about ranching? I know about not giving up. I know about getting things done when everything's against you. I know how to work until I can't stand, then work some more. She met his eyes, refused to look away. I can learn the rest. Got a name? Clara Whitlock. Cole Mercer. He jerked his head toward the house. Come inside, you're about to fall over. The interior was as contradictory as the exterior. Good furniture, well-maintained but barely lived in. Everything in its place, nothing personal visible. It felt like a stage set, not a home. He pointed her to a chair in the kitchen, then pulled out a pitcher of water without asking if she wanted any. She drank too fast, had to force herself to slow down. He watched her with that same unreadable expression. I'm not hiring, he said finally. The words hit like a physical blow. She'd been prepared for negotiation, for difficult terms, for humiliation, not for flat rejection. But you heard wrong. He sat down across from her, and there was something in his posture now, a tension that hadn't been there before. Or maybe not wrong, just the situation's changed. She should leave, should thank him for the water and walk back out into the heat and figure out where to die quietly. But something in his tone made her stay seated. What situation? He was quiet for a long moment, fingers drumming once against the table before he caught himself and stopped. You married? The question was so unexpected she almost laughed. No. Attached? Promised to anyone? No. Family? Anyone who'd come looking for you? The question should have frightened her. Instead, it just made her tired. No, there's no one. He nodded slowly, like she'd just confirmed something he'd already suspected. I've got a problem. A legal problem. There's a man, name of Harrison Reed, who's been trying to get his hands on this property for years. Used every trick he could think of, offered to buy it, tried to find loopholes in the deed, even got the county to reassess my taxes 3 times, hoping I couldn't pay. Sounds like a real piece of work. He's worse than that. He's patient, and he's been waiting for me to make a mistake. Cole stood up, walked to the window, stared out at his land. Territorial law says if a property remains unclaimed or unoccupied for more than 2 years, it can be seized for back taxes or sold to settle debts. I've been fighting that designation, but Reed's got friends in the land office. They're claiming that since I'm unmarried, without family, this place isn't being properly established as a permanent homestead. That's arbitrary? Designed specifically to target me? Yeah. His jaw was tight. But it's also legal, according to the judge Reed's got in his pocket. I've got until the end of this week to prove I'm establishing roots here, or they're going to force a sale. And guess who's got the winning bid ready to go? Clara felt something shift in her chest. She understood now why he'd asked those questions, why he was telling her this. You need a wife. I need someone willing to sign a marriage certificate and live here long enough to make the claim stick. He turned to face her. 6 months minimum. Maybe a year, depending on how hard Reed pushes back. It wouldn't be... I'm not asking for anything beyond what's on paper. Separate rooms. Your business stays yours, mine stays mine. But legally, publicly, it has to look real. And in return, room and board, safety, a place that's not trying to kill you. He paused. And if you stay the full term, see this through, I'll pay you. Enough to start over somewhere, properly. Enough that you won't have to walk into another stranger's ranch begging for work. It was insane, absolutely insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know if he was telling the truth about any of this. For all she knew, this was some elaborate scheme, some trap she was too tired and desperate to see coming. But she also didn't have a better option, or any option. Why me? She asked. You could put out word in town, find someone more suitable. Because suitable comes with strings, family expectations, reputations to maintain. Because someone local might actually want this to be real, and that's a complication I can't afford. His expression was completely neutral. And because you look like someone with nothing to lose, that makes you honest, or at least honest about being desperate. You really know how to charm a woman. I'm not trying to charm you. I'm trying to be clear about what this is and what it isn't. He crossed his arms. Decision needs to be made fast. Reed's people are watching. If you show up as my wife, it needs to be immediate. Today. This afternoon, actually. I've got a judge coming at sunset who owes me a favor. One of the few county officials Reed hasn't bought yet. He'll make it legal, file the papers before anyone can interfere. Today? You want me to marry you today? I want you to sign a paper today. The marriage part is just what we call it. His eyes were steady on hers. You can walk away right now. I'll give you supplies, enough to make it to the next town. No hard feelings. Or you can stay, play this part for 6 months to a year, and walk away with enough money to actually build something. Your choice. Clara looked around the kitchen again. Through the window, she could see the barn, the fences, the land stretching out toward mountains in the distance. It was more than she'd had in months, more than she'd likely have again. And the alternative was, what? Walking until she collapsed? Taking one of those offers in town that would destroy what was left of her self-respect? Dying slowly in some ditch because pride was the only thing she had left? Separate rooms, she said. Separate rooms. My business stays mine. Completely. And if I need to leave before the time's up, for any reason, I won't stop you, but the payment only comes if you see it through. He was still watching her with that unreadable expression. I need to know you're committed, that you won't bolt the first time things get difficult. Things are already difficult. They're going to get worse. Reed won't take this lying down. There'll be pressure, maybe threats. People will talk. The ranch hands will have questions. He moved closer, and she could see the exhaustion in his face now, the weight of whatever he'd been carrying alone. I'm not going to lie to you and say this will be easy. It's going to be exactly as hard as it sounds. She thought about her father's farm, about watching strangers carry away furniture that had been in her family for generations. Thought about the last 3 months, about the doors slammed in her face and the hunger that had become a constant companion. Thought about the fact that she was sitting in a stranger's kitchen, contemplating a fake marriage because every other door had already closed. "I need your answer," Cole said. "Sunsets in 4 hours." Clara stood up. Her legs shook slightly, but she made herself stand straight. "I'll do it. Whatever you need, however long you need it. I'll play the part." He nodded once, sharp. "All right, there are some things we need to get straight before the judge arrives. Rules, basically. Things that'll make this work." "I'm listening." "First, in public, we're married. That means you use my name. You act like this is real. The ranch hands, the neighbors, anyone who asks, you're Mrs. Mercer, and we're building a life here together. No hesitation, no cracks in the story." "Understood." "Second, you don't go into my office. There's business there, records, things that are complicated. Not because I don't trust you, but because the less you know about some of it, the safer you are if anyone comes asking questions." That should have been a red flag. Should have made her reconsider. But honestly, she was too tired to care about his secrets. Everyone had them. "Fine." "Third, you pull your weight. I'm not looking for a decoration. The ranch needs work, and if you're going to be here, you're going to contribute. I don't care if you've never done ranch work before. You'll learn. I already told you I'm not afraid of work." "Good." He pulled out a chair, gestured for her to sit again. "Now tell me your story. The real one. If someone asks how we met, we need to have our answers straight." So she told him. About the farm, about her father dying 2 years back and leaving her with debt she didn't know existed. About the bank, about trying and failing to keep things running alone. About the auction, about leaving with nothing but what she could carry. She kept it factual, emotionless. Just the facts, like reading from a ledger. He listened without interrupting, his expression never changing. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Here's what we'll say," he finally said. "You're a widow. Husband died in a mining accident a year ago, left you with nothing. You came west looking for a fresh start, heard I was looking for help, and we found common ground. Got married quick because out here, practical makes more sense than romantic." "Why a widow?" "Because it explains why you're alone, why you're willing to do this, and why you don't talk much about your past. People accept grief as a reason for silence." He met her eyes. "And because if anyone digs into Clara Whitlock's history, they'll find the farm, the auction, all of it. But if they're looking for a widow named Clara Mercer, that's a different person, harder to trace." It made sense in a cold, calculating way. She nodded. The next 3 hours were a blur. Cole showed her to a room upstairs, large, well-furnished, with windows that overlooked the ranch. "This is yours? Lock's on the inside of the door if you want it. There's clothes in the wardrobe that should fit. Belonged to my mother before she passed. Clean up, make yourself presentable. Judge will be here at sunset." She bathed for the first time in weeks, scrubbing away layers of dust and sweat and defeat. The dress in the wardrobe was simple but well made, dark blue with practical buttons. It fit well enough. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the face looking back. Thinner, harder, older than her 26 years. Downstairs, she found Cole had changed too, clean shirt, dark vest, like he was heading to a business meeting rather than a wedding. He looked her over, nodded once. "You'll do." "Try not to swoon from the romance," she said dryly. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Judge will be here soon. You're sure about this?" "Are you?" "I asked first." "Then yes, I'm sure." She wasn't, not really, but turning back now seemed worse than going forward. The judge arrived exactly at sunset, a tired-looking man in his 60s who clearly wanted this over with quickly. He barely looked at either of them, just ran through the necessary words in a monotone while they stood in the front room. 2 ranch hands Cole had pulled in served as witnesses, both looking uncomfortable and confused but smart enough not to ask questions. "Do you, Cole Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Clara Whitlock, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She looked at Cole. His face was impassive, giving away nothing. This was it. The moment where she traded whatever future she might have had for survival in a stranger's name. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." Sign here." The pen felt heavy in her hand. She signed Clara Whitlock one last time, then beneath it, Clara Mercer. The ink was still wet when the judge blotted it, folded the certificate, and handed Cole a copy. "Congratulations," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe in congratulations for arrangements like this. "I'll file this first thing tomorrow morning. Should be official by end of week." Cole handed him an envelope, payment, presumably, and walked him to the door. The ranch hands left too, muttering to each other. And then it was just the two of them, standing in a room that felt cavernous and empty, legally bound to each other and still complete strangers. "Well," Clara said into the silence. "That's done." "That's done," Cole agreed. He moved to the window, looked out at the darkening land. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow starts early around here." "What time?" "Before dawn. There's coffee in the kitchen. Help yourself whenever you wake up. I'll introduce you to the hands properly, show you around, explain how things work." She nodded, started toward the stairs, then stopped. "Cole?" He turned. "Thank you for the chance. I know this isn't what you wanted either, but thank you." His expression was unreadable in the fading light. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen what you've signed up for." That should have worried her more than it did. But Clara was too exhausted to worry, too wrung out to do anything but climb the stairs to her room, lock the door, and fall onto the bed fully dressed. She was married, to a stranger, in a deal made out of mutual desperation. What could possibly go wrong? The answer came faster than she expected. She woke to shouting. The sun wasn't up yet, just the gray light of pre-dawn filtering through her window. For a disoriented moment, she didn't know where she was. The room was unfamiliar, the bed too comfortable, everything wrong. Then memory crashed back. The ranch. The marriage. Cole. More shouting from outside. Men's voices, angry. She got up, still in yesterday's dress, and moved to the window. In the yard below, she could see Cole facing off with three men she didn't recognize. Even from here, she could read the tension in his posture. She should stay inside. This wasn't her business. Except it was now, wasn't it? She was Mrs. Mercer. Whatever happened to him, happened to her. Clara made her way downstairs and out the front door. The morning air was cold, sharp enough to clear the last fog of sleep from her head. The three men turned to look at her as she approached, and she didn't like what she saw in their faces. "Well," one of them said, smiling in a way that made her skin crawl. "This must be the new Mrs. Mercer we've been hearing about." "Clara?" Cole said, his voice tight with warning. "Go back inside." She ignored him, stopped beside him instead. Up close, the three men looked exactly like what they were. Hired muscle, trying to dress up as legitimate businessmen. "Can I help you gentlemen with something?" "Just wanted to meet Cole's new bride," the same man said. He was the leader, clearly. Mid-40s, expensive coat, smile that never reached his eyes. "Name's Tom Fletcher. I work for Harrison Reed. We're business associates of your husband's." "Strange time for a social call," Clara said. "Strange time for a wedding, too." Fletcher's smile widened. "Funny thing, Cole here spent years swearing he'd never marry, that he didn't need anyone, that this ranch was all he needed. Then suddenly, right when there's legal questions about his claim, he produces a wife out of nowhere. Quite the coincidence." "People change their minds," Cole said flatly. "Sure they do, though usually there's some kind of courtship involved. Romance. People see it coming." Fletcher's eyes moved between them. "But you two?" Nobody in town had heard a thing about Cole Mercer courting anyone. Then yesterday, out of the blue, the judge files a marriage certificate. That's suspicious. Clara felt her heart hammering but kept her face neutral. "I don't see how our private business is any of your concern. It becomes my concern when it affects legal proceedings, when it looks like fraud designed to circumvent proper legal channels." Fletcher took a step closer. "See, Mrs. Mercer, if that's really your name, my employer has invested considerable time and money into acquiring this property through legitimate means. And we don't take kindly to last-minute schemes designed to cheat him out of what's rightfully his." "Nothing on this land is rightfully Reed's," Cole growled. "The courts might disagree, especially when they hear about this suspicious timing." Fletcher pulled out a folded paper from his coat. "This is a notice of investigation. The land office will be looking into the validity of your marriage, Mrs. Mercer. They'll want to interview you separately, ask questions about your relationship, see if this holds up to scrutiny. If it doesn't, he smiled again. Well, fraud carries serious penalties for both of you. He dropped the paper at Cole's feet, tipped his hat in a mockery of politeness, and turned to leave. His companions followed, but one of them, younger, meaner looking, paused to look Clara up and down in a way that made her want to punch him. "See you around, Mrs. Mercer," he said, then laughed as they walked away. Clara waited until they were gone before she spoke. "That's Reed's move? Investigation?" "First move." Cole picked up the paper, scanned it, then crumpled it in his fist. "He's going to try to prove the marriage is fake, get it annulled, then proceed with the land seizure like I never took action at all. Can he do that? If he can find proof we're lying, yeah." Cole looked at her, and there was something new in his expression now. Not regret, exactly, more like grim determination. "I told you this would get difficult. I wasn't exaggerating. So we make sure he doesn't find proof. It's not that simple. They'll interview neighbors, watch the house, look for any sign that we're not actually living as husband and wife. Any crack in the story, any hesitation, any moment where we don't seem like a real married couple. They'll use it." Clara thought about the way Fletcher had looked at her, the calculation in his eyes. He was already looking for cracks, already planning how to tear this apart. "Then we don't give them any cracks," she said. "You said in public we're married, so in public we're married, completely. Whatever it takes to sell this." Cole studied her face. "You understand what you're saying? What that means?" "I understand that I didn't come this far to fail because I wasn't willing to commit to the act." She met his eyes. "I'm not going to be the weak link here, Cole. If Reed's people come asking questions, they'll hear about a real marriage from me. No hesitation, no doubt. They'll ask about personal things, about our relationship. They'll try to catch us in inconsistencies. Then we'd better get our story absolutely straight." Clara crossed her arms against the morning chill. "Tell me everything I need to know about you, everything someone married to you would know. We've got work to do." He looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Maybe respect, maybe just acknowledgement that she was as stubborn as he was. "All right," he said finally. "Come on. We've got a lot to cover, and Reed's people will be back sooner than we'd like." As they walked back toward the house, Clara glanced over her shoulder at the empty yard where Fletcher and his men had stood. The sun was starting to rise now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. She'd thought the hard part was accepting Cole's proposal. Turned out that was just the beginning. The real work, the real gamble, was only starting now. The kitchen smelled like coffee and tension. Clara sat across from Cole at the same table where, less than 24 hours ago, she'd agreed to this arrangement. Now, with Fletcher's threat hanging over them like a noose, that decision felt both more real and more dangerous than it had in the desperate haze of yesterday. Cole had a notebook open between them, pen in hand. "We need to establish a timeline, Swap," he said. "How we met, when, where. The details have to match every time either of us tells it." "You said I was a widow. Husband died in a mining accident." "Right. His name was..." Cole paused, thinking. "James. James Whitlock. You married him young. He went to work the mines up north. Accident happened about 14 months ago. You spent some time trying to make it work alone. Couldn't. Started moving west looking for opportunities." Clara nodded, committing it to memory. "And we met?" "3 months ago. You came through town, heard I might be hiring, stopped by to ask. We talked. You stayed on to help with some work around the ranch." He was writing as he spoke, creating a record they could both reference. "We kept it quiet at first because you weren't sure you were staying. I wasn't sure I wanted anyone permanent, but things developed." "How romantic," Clara said dryly. "It doesn't have to be romantic. It has to be believable." He looked up at her. "People out here understand practical arrangements. Two people who needed something, found it in each other, decided to make it official. That works." "What about before 3 months ago? If they dig into my actual history, they'll find the farm, the auction, all of it. But that's Clara Whitlock's history. You're Clara Mercer now, widow of James Whitlock. The farm came from your father, yes, but it was already gone before James died. The timeline holds." She traced a finger along the wood grain of the table. "What about you? What do I need to know about Cole Mercer that a wife would know?" He leaned back, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncomfortable. Not scared, Cole didn't strike her as someone who scared easily, but definitely out of his depth. What kind of things? Everything. Your past, your family, how you got this ranch, why you're still unmarried at, what, 40? 38, he corrected. And I stayed unmarried because marriage seemed like a complication I didn't need. Well, you've got one now, so start talking. He was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. I'm originally from Missouri. Came west 12 years ago with enough money to buy land and enough sense not to throw it away on the first pretty piece of nothing someone tried to sell me. Spent 2 years working other people's ranches, learning the territory, figuring out what land was actually worth something. And this place? Bought it from a man who was heading back east, didn't want to deal with frontier life anymore. He'd built the house, started the ranch, then his wife died and he lost his taste for it. Sold it to me for less than it was worth just to be done with it. Cole's expression darkened. That's when the trouble started. Harrison Reed had his eye on this property for years. Good water access, protected valley, close enough to town for supply runs, but far enough out to run cattle without interference. When the previous owner wouldn't sell to him, Reed waited him out, figured grief would make him desperate. Then I showed up and bought it before Reed could make his move. He's held a grudge for 12 years? Reed doesn't do grudges. He does business. And in his mind, this land should be his. Everything he's done since, the legal challenges, the tax reassessments, the constant pressure, it's all been working toward that goal, getting me off this property by any means necessary. Clara absorbed this, fitting the pieces together. What about family? Parents? Siblings? Parents are dead. Father died when I was 15, mother about 7 years back. No siblings, no cousins I keep in touch with. It's just me. That's going to make them suspicious. No family, no ties, then suddenly you're married? Which is why we lean into the practical angle. I'm not getting younger. Ranch needs stability. You needed security. We're both practical people who made a practical choice. He met her eyes. They can be suspicious all they want. Suspicious isn't proof. What else? Clara pressed. Personal things. Things a wife would notice. He looked distinctly uncomfortable now. Like what? I don't know, how you take your coffee, what side of the bed you sleep on, whether you snore, the little details that come from actually living with someone. Coffee black, no sugar. I sleep on the right side out of habit from years of sleeping alone. And I don't know if I snore because there's never been anyone around to tell me. Well, you don't, Clara said. Or at least, not loud enough for me to hear through the walls last night. Something flickered across his face. Maybe surprised that she'd thought to listen, or that she was taking this seriously enough to notice details like that. What about you? What do I need to know about my wife? The word felt strange, wrong in her mouth when he said it like that, but she pushed past the discomfort. I like my coffee with cream if there is any, black if there isn't. I sleep on my left side. I wake up early because years of farm work trained it into me. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, handle livestock, and work until my hands bleed if that's what needs doing. Anything else? Things that aren't about work? She hadn't expected that question, hadn't expected him to care about anything beyond the practical details. I read when I can. Don't have much patience for idle gossip. I've got a temper, but I've gotten good at controlling it because losing control out here gets you nowhere. She paused. And I don't like being lied to, even when the lie is meant to protect me. I'd rather know the truth and make my own choices. Cole studied her face. Fair enough. Then here's the truth. Reed's people are going to play dirty. Fletcher showing up this morning was just a warning shot. They'll try to catch us alone, ask questions designed to trip us up. They'll spread rumors, turn people against us, make life difficult in every way they can think of. I can handle difficult. Can you handle dangerous? The question hung in the air between them. Clara thought about Fletcher's smile, about the way his companion had looked at her. You think it'll come to that? I think Reed wants this land badly enough that he won't let a marriage certificate stop him. If legal challenges don't work, he'll try other methods. Cole's jaw was tight. I need to know you understand what you're in the middle of. This isn't just about fooling some investigators. It's about standing up to a man who's used to getting what he wants, who has the money and connections to make problems disappear. You're trying to scare me off. I'm trying to be honest. You said you don't like being lied to. Clara stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the ranch in the morning light. Somewhere out there, Fletcher and his people were probably already planning their next move. And here she was, tied to a stranger through a piece of paper and mutual desperation, being warned that things were going to get worse. She should be terrified. Maybe she was, underneath the exhaustion and stubbornness. But fear was just another thing she'd gotten good at pushing down. "I'm not leaving," she said without turning around. "Whatever comes, I'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. That's the arrangement." She heard him stand, heard his footsteps approaching. He stopped a few feet behind her. "Why? Why what? Why are you so determined to see this through? You could walk away right now, take some supplies, try your luck somewhere else. Instead, you're choosing to stay in a situation that's probably going to get uglier before it gets better." Clara turned to face him. "You want the real answer? Because I'm tired of running, tired of losing, tired of being the one who gets beaten down by circumstances and men with more power than they deserve." She crossed her arms. "Maybe this is a stupid fight to pick. Maybe I'll regret it, but at least it's my choice to make. At least I'm standing my ground for once instead of just letting everything get taken from me." Something in Cole's expression shifted. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "All right then, let's make this work." The rest of the morning was spent going over details until Clara's head hurt from trying to remember everything. Cole showed her around the ranch properly, the barn where they kept the horses, the chicken coop that needed repairs, the far pasture where the cattle grazed. He introduced her to the ranch hands, 4 men who looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. The foreman was a weathered man in his 50s named Dutch. He shook her hand with obvious reluctance. "Ma'am, congratulations on the marriage." "Thank you." Quite a surprise, Cole showing up with a wife. Didn't know he was courting anyone. Cole's hand settled on the small of Clara's back, casual and possessive. Kept it quiet. Seemed like the smart thing to do. Dutch's eyes narrowed slightly. "Sure, smart." But he didn't push, just nodded and went back to work. The other hands introduced themselves. Young Tommy, who couldn't have been more than 19, a quiet man named Sterling, who barely spoke, and a rough-looking character called Briggs, who stared at Clara a beat too long before Cole cleared his throat meaningfully. "Clara's going to be helping around the place," Cole announced. "You treat her with respect, take orders from her same as you would from me. Anyone has a problem with that, you can collect your pay and move on." No one argued, but Clara could feel the weight of their skepticism, their doubt. They didn't believe this was real, and why would they? Even she barely believed it. Back at the house, Cole started showing her the daily routines, the chores that kept the ranch running. The chickens need feeding every morning, eggs collected. Kitchen garden needs watering when it's dry. That's your responsibility now. There's mending that's been piling up, and the house could use a woman's touch in places I've been ignoring. "Sounds like you're getting quite a deal out of this arrangement," Clara observed. "You're getting a roof over your head and 3 meals a day. I'd say we're even." She couldn't argue with that. "What about you? What will you be doing while I'm playing housewife?" "Running the ranch, managing the hands, trying to keep Reed from finding new ways to make my life difficult." He paused at the door to his office, the one room he'd told her was off limits, "and dealing with some business that's better kept separate from all this. The mysterious business you don't want me knowing about. The business that'll keep you safer by not knowing about." He met her eyes. "I know you said you don't like being lied to. This isn't lying. It's protecting you from information that could be used against you." Clara wanted to argue, but the logic was sound. If she didn't know his secrets, she couldn't accidentally reveal them. "Fine, but if that business comes back to bite us, I expect full honesty then." "Deal." The next few days fell into a strange rhythm. Clara threw herself into the work, feeding animals, tending the garden, cleaning parts of the house that had been neglected for years. It was hard, physical labor, but it was familiar, comforting even. Like the farm, but without the weight of debt crushing down on her. Cole kept his distance, polite but detached. They ate meals together, maintained the appearance of a married couple when the ranch hands were around, but the moment they were alone, the facade dropped. Separate rooms, separate lives, just like he'd promised. It should have been fine. This was what she'd signed up for. But Clara found herself watching him when he didn't notice, trying to figure out who the stranger she'd married actually was. He worked harder than any man she'd seen, up before dawn and not stopping until dark. He was fair with the hands, tough, but not cruel. And there was something in the way he looked at his land, a fierce protectiveness that went beyond simple ownership. On the fourth day, a woman came calling. Clara was in the garden when she heard the wagon approach. She straightened, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and saw a well-dressed woman climbing down from the driver's seat. Mid-30s, expensive clothes, the kind of confident bearing that came from never having to worry about where your next meal was coming from. "You must be Clara," the woman said, not bothering with a greeting. "I'm Margaret Lawson. I own the property 3 miles east of here." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Lawson." Miss Lawson never saw the point in marrying. She looked Clara up and down in a way that was somehow more insulting than Fletcher's leer had been. "Though I see Cole finally found the point." Clara kept her expression neutral. "Can I help you with something?" "I'm here to see Cole. We have business to discuss." "He's out with the herd. Should be back within the hour if you want to wait." Margaret's smile was sharp. "Oh, I'll wait. Gives us time to get acquainted. After all, we're neighbors now. Sort of." They went inside and Clara made coffee she didn't want to make for a woman she already didn't like. Margaret sat at the kitchen table like she owned it, looking around with barely concealed disdain. "This place could use a woman's touch," she observed. "Though I suppose you've only been here a few days. Barely enough time to unpack, much less redecorate." "I'm still getting settled," Clara said carefully. "I'm sure." Margaret accepted the coffee with a dismissive nod. "You know, it's funny. Cole and I have been doing business together for years. He's bought cattle from me, sold me hay. We've helped each other out more times than I can count. And in all that time, he never once mentioned he was seeing anyone. We kept things private." Clearly. Margaret took a sip, her eyes never leaving Clara's face. "Where did you say you were from?" "I didn't." "Ah, well, that's mysterious. And you were married before, I heard? To a miner who died?" Clara felt her spine stiffen. News traveled fast. "That's right. Must have been difficult, losing a husband so young." But there was no sympathy in Margaret's voice, just cold calculation. "And then to remarry so quickly. Some might say suspiciously quickly. Some might say it's none of their business." Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, I like you. You've got spirit. You'll need it. Married to Cole Mercer. He's not an easy man." "I'm not an easy woman." "No, I don't suppose you are." Margaret set down her cup. "Let me give you some advice, Clara. Neighbor to neighbor. Cole's got enemies, powerful enemies. Harrison Reed chief among them. And Reed doesn't take defeat well. If he thinks this marriage is standing between him and what he wants, he'll tear it apart piece by piece until there's nothing left." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning, from someone who's seen what Reed does to people who get in his way." Margaret stood up. "I don't know what arrangement you have with Cole, and frankly, I don't care. But if you're smart, you'll take whatever he's paying you and leave before things get ugly, because they will get ugly." Before Clara could respond, the front door opened. Cole walked in, saw Margaret, and his expression went carefully blank. "Margaret, didn't expect to see you today. Thought I'd come by and meet your new bride. Make sure she knows what she's gotten herself into." Margaret moved toward the door, paused next to Cole. "We should talk about the Reed situation, privately." "There's nothing to talk about. I've got it handled." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you've just made it personal, and Reed has a way of making personal very painful." She glanced back at Clara. "Nice meeting you, Mrs. Mercer. I'm sure we'll see each other again." After she left, silence filled the kitchen. Cole moved to the window, watched Margaret's wagon disappear down the road. "What did she say to you?" "That I should leave before things get ugly, that Reed's going to come after us." Clara crossed her arms. She seemed pretty confident about it. "Margaret's been dealing with Reed for years. She knows how he operates." "Are you two—" Clara stopped, not sure how to phrase the question. "No." Cole turned to face her. "We've done business together. That's all. She's got her own reasons for disliking Reed, her own fights with him over property and water rights, but we're not— There's nothing personal there." She seems to think there could be. "Well, there couldn't, and now there definitely can't because I'm married." He said it flatly, like stating a fact. "Which Margaret knows, which is probably why she's here causing trouble. She doesn't like losing, even when there was nothing to lose." Clara absorbed this, adding it to the growing list of complications. "She's right, though, isn't she, about Reed, about this getting uglier?" "Probably. Cole moved closer, and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Concern, maybe. You holding up all right? It was the first time he'd asked. The first time since their arrangement began that he'd treated her like anything other than a business partner. I'm fine. You don't have to be fine. This is a lot to deal with. I said I could handle it. I meant it. But even as she said it, Clara felt the weight of the last few days pressing down on her. The constant performance, the watchful eyes of the ranch hands, Fletcher's threats, and Margaret's warnings, and the knowledge that she was walking a razor's edge between survival and disaster. Cole was still watching her. There's a town gathering this weekend, dance and social at the church hall. We should go. Why? Because married couples go to things like that. Because people need to see us together, comfortable with each other. Because the more normal we appear, the harder it is for Reed to prove otherwise. He paused. And because you've been cooped up on this ranch for days, you could probably use a change of scenery. Clara thought about facing a room full of strangers, all of them watching, judging, looking for cracks in the facade. Sounds terrible. It will be, but it's necessary. Everything about this arrangement seems to be necessary and terrible. Welcome to my life. But there was something almost like a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Against her better judgment, Clara felt herself smile back. When is this nightmare social? Saturday night. Gives us a couple days to prepare. Get our story absolutely straight. Practice looking like we can stand each other. I can stand you just fine. The feeling's mutual. But standing each other and looking like a couple who got married for love are two different things. He moved to the door, stopped. Thank you, by the way. For what? For not running when Margaret tried to scare you off. For staying, even though this keeps getting more complicated. He met her eyes. You're tougher than you look. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. After he left, Clara sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into evening. Through the window, she could see the sun starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Beautiful and harsh at the same time, just like everything else out here. She'd been at the ranch less than a week, and already her old life felt like something that had happened to someone else. The desperate woman who'd walked up this drive barely recognizing herself. That was a stranger now. Or maybe Clara was the stranger, and that desperate woman was who she really was underneath. Either way, there was no going back, only forward into whatever came next. Saturday arrived too quickly. Clara spent the morning trying to make herself presentable with limited resources. The dress from Cole's mother was fine for daily wear, but for a social gathering she needed something better. She found another dress in the wardrobe, this one a deep green that actually fit her properly. With her hair pinned up and her face cleaned of the dust and work of ranch life, she looked almost respectable. Cole was waiting downstairs in clean clothes, hair combed back, looking uncomfortable in the formal attire. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The ride into town was quiet. Cole kept the horses at a steady pace, and Clara found herself memorizing details about him. The way he held the reins, the set of his shoulders, the small scar above his left eyebrow that she'd never asked about. If anyone questioned her tonight, she needed to seem like a woman who'd spent months falling for this man, not days learning how to fake it. Nervous? Cole asked without looking at her. Should I be? Probably. Everyone's going to want to meet you, ask questions, judge whether we're really married or just playing at it. He glanced over. Remember what we talked about. Keep answers simple, stick to the story, and if anyone asks something you don't know how to answer, defer to you or change the subject, I remember. Clara smoothed her dress. What about touching? Married couples touch each other, hold hands, stand close. We've barely been in the same room for more than 10 minutes without one of us leaving. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, without warning, he reached over and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm, larger than hers. Like this. We'll stand close. I'll keep a hand on your back or your arm. Small touches that look natural. It didn't feel natural. It felt like exactly what it was. Two people pretending at intimacy they didn't have. But Clara forced herself to relax into it, to let her hand rest in his without tension. How's this? Better. Just remember, everyone watching us is looking for a reason to doubt. We can't give them one. The church hall was already crowded when they arrived. The music could be heard from outside, fiddles and guitars creating a lively tune that seemed at odds with Clara's knotted stomach. Cole helped her down from the wagon, his hand lingering at her waist a beat longer than necessary, and she understood the performance had begun. Inside, conversations died as they entered. Every eye in the room turned to look, and Clara felt the weight of all that attention like a physical thing. Cole's hand tightened slightly on her back. A silent message. Steady. An older woman approached first, all smiles and barely concealed curiosity. Cole Mercer, as I live and breathe. And you must be the new Mrs. Mercer we've all been hearing about. Clara, she said, extending her hand, pleased to meet you. Oh, the pleasure's all mine, dear. I'm Mrs. Patterson. I run the general store in town. We're all just so excited to finally meet you. Cole's been keeping you quite the secret. We preferred to keep things private, Cole said smoothly. Didn't see the need to broadcast our business. Well, of course. But a wedding, that's cause for celebration, not secrecy. Mrs. Patterson's eyes were sharp despite the friendly tone. How did you two meet? I don't recall seeing you around town before, Clara. And so it began. The questions, the probing, the careful trap setting disguised as friendly conversation. Clara answered each one according to the script she and Cole had rehearsed, watching Mrs. Patterson's face for any sign that she'd slipped up. And your late husband, dear? James, was it? That must have been so difficult. It was, but life goes on. You adapt, or you don't survive. Clara let a hint of real pain creep into her voice. It wasn't hard, just thinking about different losses. Cole gave me a reason to believe in a future again. She felt Cole's hand move from her back to her shoulder, a gesture that could have been comfort or possession. We're lucky we found each other, he said, and there was something in his tone that almost sounded genuine. Mrs. Patterson seemed mollified, or at least less suspicious. She excused herself to share the gossip with others, and immediately 3 more people descended to repeat the same questions in slightly different ways. It was exhausting. Each conversation required total focus, making sure their stories aligned, that no detail contradicted what they'd said before. Clara found herself grateful for Cole's presence beside her, the solid reminder that she wasn't doing this alone. Then Harrison Reed walked in. Clara recognized him immediately, even though they'd never met. Everything about the man screamed power and money. Expensive suit, confident stride, smile that didn't quite hide the calculation in his eyes. He was older than she expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and the bearing of someone used to being the most important person in any room. Cole's entire body went rigid beside her. Reed made his way across the room with deliberate slowness, greeting people, shaking hands, playing the role of respected pillar of the community. But Clara could see the way his attention kept drifting back to them, the predatory focus of a hunter tracking prey. Cole, Reed said when he finally reached them, extending a hand. Good to see you out socializing for once, and this must be the famous new bride. Cole didn't take the offered hand. Reed, what are you doing here? Same as everyone else. Enjoying the social, supporting the community. Reed turned to Clara, and his smile widened. Mrs. Mercer, Harrison Reed, I'm sure your husband has mentioned me. Once or twice, Clara said carefully. All terrible things, I'm sure. Cole and I have had our disagreements over the years. Reed's tone was jovial, but his eyes were cold. Though I must say, I'm impressed. He managed to find himself a wife just in time to complicate that land dispute we've been working through. Quite the lucky coincidence. Not luck, Cole said tightly. Just life moving forward. Yes, life does have interesting timing sometimes, doesn't it? Reed shifted his attention fully to Clara, and she felt like a specimen under glass. Tell me, Mrs. Mercer, how are you finding ranch life? It must be quite different from, well, wherever you came from. It's hard work. But I've never been afraid of that. No, I don't suppose you have. A woman doesn't end up out here on the frontier unless she's running from something or desperate for something. His smile never wavered. Which are you? The question was designed to rattle her, to make her defensive. Clara met his eyes steadily. I'm someone who knows an opportunity when she sees it. Cole needed a partner. I needed a fresh start. We found common ground. How wonderfully practical. Though I do wonder, have you asked your husband about the history of that ranch you're now living on? About the previous owner and what drove him away. That's enough, Reed, Cole said, voice like gravel. I'm just making conversation, Cole. Getting to know your lovely wife. But Reed's expression had sharpened, sensing weakness. You see, Mrs. Mercer, that ranch has quite a history. Tragedy, loss, disputed claims going back years. Some might say it's cursed. Others might say it's simply too valuable to be left in the hands of someone who doesn't appreciate its true worth. Clara felt Cole's hand tighten on her shoulder, could sense he was seconds away from doing something that would cause a scene. She put her own hand over his, a calming gesture. The only thing that matters is it's our home now, and we intend to keep it that way. Reed's eyes flickered between them, reading the protective stance, the unified front. For a moment, something dangerous flashed across his face. Then the genial mask slipped back into place. Well, I suppose we'll see how things develop. Enjoy your evening. He walked away, leaving tension crackling in his wake. I want to hit him, Cole said quietly. I know, don't. Clara squeezed his hand. That's what he wants, to provoke you into doing something stupid in front of all these witnesses. When did you get so smart about manipulation? When did you get so bad at controlling your temper? But she said it gently, without accusation. Come on, let's dance or something. Remind everyone here that we're just a normal couple having a normal night. Cole looked at her like she'd suggested they set themselves on fire. I don't dance. You do tonight, unless you want Reed to spend the rest of the evening watching us stand here looking uncomfortable. I hate that you're right. The music was still playing, couples moving around the floor with varying degrees of skill. Cole led her into the crowd with obvious reluctance, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers in a grip that was slightly too tight. Relax, Clara murmured. You're holding me like I'm a weapon you're trying not to drop. I don't know how to do this. Just move. Follow the rhythm. I'll help. She'd danced at barn raisings back home, knew the basic steps well enough to guide them both through it. They moved across the floor awkwardly at first, Cole stiff and uncomfortable, Clara trying to make it look natural. But gradually, something shifted. They found a rhythm, their bodies learning how to move together. Cole's grip on her waist relaxed slightly, became less about maintaining distance and more about keeping her close. See, Clara said. Not so terrible. Still terrible. Just slightly less so. She almost laughed. Would have, if she wasn't so aware of all the eyes watching them, judging, looking for proof that this was all a sham. Instead, she moved closer, let her head rest briefly against his shoulder in a gesture that could have been affection. Cole went very still, then quietly. What are you doing? Selling it. Making it look real. But even as she said it, Clara was aware of his heartbeat, the warmth of him, the way they fit together despite being strangers. It was unsettling. You're good at this, Cole said after a moment. At pretending? At adapting, at doing what needs to be done. His voice was low, meant only for her. I know this isn't what you wanted, what you expected out of life. What I wanted stopped mattering the day the bank took my father's farm. What I expected went away long before that. Clara pulled back slightly to look at him. This is what I've got. Might as well make it work. Something in his expression softened. Still, thank you. The song ended before she could respond. They separated and Clara felt the loss of his warmth immediately, which was ridiculous. This was an arrangement, a business deal. The fact that they could pretend otherwise for a few minutes didn't change the reality. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and careful performances. By the time they left, Clara's face hurt from smiling, her mind spinning from all the names and faces she'd need to remember. Cole was quiet on the drive back, lost in his own thoughts. I think that went well, Clara offered as the ranch came into view. You think? No one called us liars to our faces. Reed didn't make a scene. We looked... She searched for the right word. Plausible. Plausible, Cole repeated. That's setting the bar pretty low. It's setting it realistically. She glanced at him. What did Reed mean about the previous owner? About what drove him away? Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, his wife died here, childbirth. Neither she nor the baby survived. After that, he couldn't stand being on the property. Every corner reminded him of what he'd lost. So he sold it and left. That's awful. It's the frontier. Awful happens. But there was something in his voice, a heaviness that suggested the story affected him more than he wanted to admit. Reed likes to bring it up, likes to act like the place is cursed. It's just another tactic to try to devalue it, make people question why anyone would want to live here. Clara looked out at the ranch in the moonlight, the house that had felt so empty when she arrived, the land that stretched out toward distant mountains. I don't think it's cursed. I think it's just a place. What happens here, good or bad, that's on the people living it, not on some phantom tragedy from the past. Cole pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? If we're just helpless against fate and history and the whims of powerful men like Reed, then we might as well give up now. She met his eyes. But I don't intend to give up. Do you? No. He said it firmly, like a vow. I don't. They went inside together, the late hour and exhaustion settling over them both. At the base of the stairs, they paused, an awkward moment where the pretense of the evening met the reality of their arrangement. Good night, Clara. Good night, Cole. Separate rooms, separate lives, just business. But as Clara lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, she kept thinking about the dance, about the feel of his hand on her waist, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the way they'd moved together like they'd done it 1,000 times before. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. But somewhere in the darkness, doubt crept in. And with it, the dangerous question she'd been avoiding since this whole thing started. What if pretending wasn't enough? What if somewhere along the line, the act became real? She pushed the thought away, pulled the blanket tighter, and forced herself toward sleep. There would be time enough to worry about complicated questions later. Right now, surviving was complicated enough. Morning came too early, dragging Clara from restless dreams into the cold reality of dawn. She dressed quickly, splashed water on her face, and made her way downstairs to find Cole already gone. Coffee sat warming on the stove, a concession to domesticity that felt almost thoughtful. She poured herself a cup and stood at the window, watching the ranch wake up under a sky threatening rain. The dance had been 2 days ago, but the weight of it still hung over everything. She'd played her part well, too well maybe. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Cole's hand on her waist, heard the low rumble of his voice meant only for her ears. It was getting harder to remember where the performance ended, and something real began. The door opened behind her. Cole, hat in hand, dirt already on his boots. Thought you'd still be asleep. Couldn't. He moved to pour his own coffee, and they stood in silence that wasn't quite comfortable but wasn't hostile either. Something in between, undefined and complicated. Dutch came to me this morning, Cole said finally. Asked some questions about you. About us. Clara's stomach tightened. What kind of questions? The suspicious kind. Wanted to know why you never came to town before the wedding. Why none of the hands had heard about you until you showed up as my wife. He took a long drink. I gave him the same story we've been telling everyone else. Don't think he bought it. You think he'll cause trouble? Dutch is loyal to the ranch, not to me personally. If he thinks something's off, he'll watch. Wait. And if he finds proof we're lying, he'll use it however benefits him most. Cole set down his cup. We need to be more careful. No more separate lives when anyone might see. This has to look real all the time, not just when we're putting on a show. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to actually live like we're married. Eat meals together. Spend time in the same room. Act like two people who chose this instead of two strangers sharing a house. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know it's not what we agreed to, but Reed's people are watching. Dutch is watching. Half the town is probably watching. We can't afford any cracks. Clara understood the logic, hated it, but understood it. Fine. What do you want me to do differently? Start with breakfast. We eat together, talk like normal couples talk. Then you come with me to check the north fence. It needs repairs, and having you there makes it look like we enjoy each other's company. Do we? The question came out before she could stop it. Cole looked at her, and something complicated passed across his face. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a month. They fell into the new routine slowly, awkwardly. Breakfast together became a daily exercise in small talk and forced normalcy. Clara learned that Cole read the newspaper when he could get one, that he had strong opinions about cattle breeding, that he'd broken his left arm twice and it ached before storms. Small details that felt both intimate and meaningless. Working alongside him was easier. Out on the ranch, they had purpose, tasks that needed doing. Clara proved she could handle hard labor, could mend fence and move livestock and work until her hands were raw. Cole stopped treating her like she might break, started giving her real responsibility. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon as they finished repairing a section of fence. "Better than I expected." "You thought I'd be useless? I thought you'd be competent. You're better than that." He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Where'd you learn to work like this?" "My father's farm. He didn't have sons, so I learned to do everything. Plowing, planting, animal husbandry, repairs, all of it." She flexed her sore hands. "He used to say a person who couldn't fix what broke wasn't worth much on a farm." "Smart man." "He was, just not smart enough to avoid bad loans and worse business partners." The bitterness crept into her voice before she could stop it. "All that work, all those years, and it still wasn't enough. Someone else always has more power, more money, more ways to take what you've built." Cole was quiet for a moment. "That's why you're here. Why you said yes to this. It's not just about survival, it's about not letting them win." "Them?" "People like Reed. People who think power and money mean they own everything and everyone." He met her eyes. "I get it. That's why I'm fighting too." It was the most honest conversation they'd had since the marriage. Clara felt something shift between them, a tentative understanding that went beyond their arrangement. "Cole, rider coming," he interrupted, looking toward the eastern road. Clara followed his gaze and saw a horse approaching fast, dust trailing behind it. As it got closer, she recognized Dutch on the saddle, his face grim. He pulled up hard, the horse snorting and stamping. "We've got a problem. Found 6 head missing from the south pasture this morning. Fence was cut, cattle driven off sometime during the night." Cole's entire demeanor changed, going cold and hard. "Rustlers? Or someone wanting to look like rustlers?" Dutch dismounted, and Clara saw the anger in his weathered face. "Coincidence this happens right after Reed makes noise about your land claim?" "There's no such thing as coincidence where Reed's concerned." Cole was already moving toward his horse. "Get the hands together. We're going after them." "Cole?" Clara started. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone you don't know." He swung into the saddle, then looked down at her. "I mean it, Clara. If this is Reed making a move, it might not just be about the cattle." Fear spiked through her, but she kept her voice steady. "How long will you be gone?" "As long as it takes. Could be a few hours, could be overnight." He hesitated, then added, "You'll be all right?" "I've handled worse than being alone." He nodded once, then rode off with Dutch. Within minutes, the other hands joined them, and Clara watched them disappear toward the southern range, armed and ready for trouble. The house felt enormous and empty once they were gone. Clara went through the motions of her daily work, but her mind kept circling back to Cole's warning. If this wasn't just rustlers, if Reed was escalating beyond legal challenges to actual violence, then everything had just gotten significantly more dangerous. She was pulling laundry off the line when she heard the second horse. This one came from the west, moving slower. Clara's hand went to the rifle Cole had left leaning against the porch rail, her heart hammering. The rider came into view, and she recognized Margaret Lawson's expensive mare. Margaret dismounted with practiced ease, looked at Clara holding the rifle, and smiled. "Expecting trouble, Mrs. Mercer." "Just being cautious." Clara didn't lower the weapon. "Cole's not here." "I know. I saw him and the hands riding south. Heard about the missing cattle." Margaret tied her horse and approached the porch uninvited. "That's actually why I'm here. We need to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that you're in over your head, and you don't even realize it yet." Margaret's expression was serious now, the usual condescension replaced by something almost like concern. "Can we talk inside? What I have to say isn't for casual eavesdropping." Every instinct told Clara to refuse, to send Margaret away, and wait for Cole to return. But curiosity won out. She led Margaret inside, keeping the rifle close, and gestured to the kitchen table. "Coffee?" "No, thank you. This won't take long." Margaret sat down, folded her hands on the table. "I'm going to be direct with you, Clara. This marriage of yours, it's not fooling anyone who matters. Reed knows it's a sham. So do I. So does half the county." Clara's grip tightened on the rifle. "That's quite an accusation." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact. The timing was too convenient, your history too vague, Cole's behavior too sudden. The only question is why you agreed to it. Margaret leaned forward. I'm guessing desperation. You needed money, security, a way out of whatever hole you'd fallen into. Cole needed a wife on paper to protect his land claim. Mutually beneficial arrangement. Even if that were true, it is true. And the reason I'm here is to tell you that it won't work. Reed has investigators looking into your past right now. They'll find the farm, the auction, the timeline that doesn't quite match up with Cole's story about a grieving widow. They'll find the inconsistencies, and when they do, they'll use them to invalidate the marriage and proceed with seizing the ranch. Clara felt cold despite the warmth of the kitchen. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't like Reed any more than Cole does. Because that land should stay with Cole, not fall into Reed's greedy hands. And because you seem like a decent woman who got caught up in something bigger than she realized. Margaret's expression softened slightly. I'm offering you a way out. Leave now, today. I'll give you money, enough to start over somewhere far from here. In return, you make a statement that the marriage was coerced, that Cole forced you into it. That gives him a legal out too, and actually might generate enough sympathy that the court delays Reed's seizure. You want me to betray him. I want you to save yourself, and possibly save him in the process, though Cole's too stubborn to see it that way. Margaret stood up. This is a one-time offer, Clara. Once Reed's investigators find what they're looking for, you won't have the option to leave cleanly. You'll be implicated in fraud, possibly face charges. Is protecting Cole Mercer's ranch worth that risk? Clara's mind raced. Margaret was right about the danger. She'd known from the beginning that this could blow up spectacularly, but the idea of running, of betraying Cole's trust and validating every suspicious whisper in town made her stomach turn. No, she said quietly. No. I'm not leaving, and I'm not making any statements against Cole. Clara set the rifle down but kept herself between it and Margaret. This is my choice, my risk to take. Whatever happens, I'll face it. Margaret stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which. Probably both. Clara moved toward the door, a clear dismissal. Thank you for the offer, but I'm staying. Then you're a fool. Margaret walked to the door, paused. When this falls apart, and it will fall apart, don't say I didn't warn you. After she left, Clara stood alone in the kitchen, hands shaking from adrenaline and doubt. Margaret's words echoed in her head, poking at every insecurity she'd been trying to ignore. What was she doing? Why was she risking everything for a man she barely knew, for a piece of land that wasn't even hers? But even as the questions circled, she knew the answer. She was staying because running was what she'd been doing for months, and it had gotten her nowhere. She was staying because for the first time since losing her father's farm, she felt like she was fighting back instead of just surviving. She was staying because the thought cut off as she heard horses returning. Clara grabbed the rifle and went to the porch. Cole and the hands were back, driving the missing cattle before them. But Cole's face was dark with anger, and Dutch had blood on his sleeve. She ran down to meet them. What happened? Found the cattle about 5 miles south. Found the men who took them, too. Cole dismounted stiffly, and Clara saw bruises forming on his face. They put up a fight. Are you hurt? Nothing serious. Dutch took a knife to the arm, but he'll live. He looked at her more closely. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Margaret was here. Clara hesitated, unsure how much to say in front of the hands. Cole understood immediately. Dutch, get those cattle settled and have Sterling look at your arm. Everyone else, back to your regular work. He waited until they'd moved off, then turned to Clara. What did she want? They went inside, and Clara told him everything. About the investigators, about Margaret's offer, about the warning that it was all going to fall apart. Cole listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. She's trying to help Reed, he said when Clara finished. Offering you a way out makes her look sympathetic, while still accomplishing Reed's goal of getting rid of you and invalidating the marriage. That's what I thought too. But Cole, what if she's right about the investigators? What if they find something that proves we're lying? Then we deal with it when it happens. He moved to the window, stared out at his land with that fierce protectiveness Clara was starting to recognize. I'm not giving up. Not because of threats or investigators or Reed's money. This ranch is mine. I've bled for it, fought for it, built it into something worth having, and I'm not letting it go without a fight. Even if the fight costs you everything? He turned to face her. What's everything? Money? Reputation? Those things don't mean much out here. Land means something. Standing your ground means something. Not letting powerful men bully you into surrender means something. His eyes were intense on hers. You understand that. That's why you're still here instead of taking Margaret's offer. Clara felt something tighten in her chest. How do you know I didn't consider it? Because you're still here. Because you're asking me about investigators instead of packing your things. He moved closer, and the space between them suddenly felt charged. You're not a runner, Clara. Whatever else you are, you're not that. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not, but I know enough. His voice dropped lower. I know you walked 3 days through hell to get here. I know you agreed to marry a stranger rather than give up. I know you've worked harder than any ranch hand I've got, learned faster, complained less. I know you stood up to Fletcher and Reed and Margaret without backing down. He paused. So no, maybe I don't know everything about you, but I know the parts that matter. The air between them felt thick, complicated. Clara forced herself to step back, to remember that this was still an arrangement, still temporary. The investigators are going to dig into my past. They'll find out about James. There is no James. Exactly. They'll find out I was never married before, that the whole widow story is a lie. What then? Cole was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then we changed the story. Say you were engaged, not married. James died before the wedding. It's close enough to the truth that the details blur together. People misremember things, especially when they're grieving. That's a pretty convenient misremembering. It's plausible. That's all that matters. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, I'm not going to lie to you and say this is going well. Reed's escalating, his people are digging, and we're walking a razor's edge between pulling this off and everything collapsing. But I've been in tight situations before. You find a way through or you make one. How? I don't know yet, but I'm working on it. He looked at her seriously. In the meantime, we keep doing what we've been doing. Act married, live married, give them nothing to use against us. Can you do that? Clara thought about Margaret's warning, about the investigators closing in, about all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Then she thought about walking away, about surrendering to Reed's pressure and proving everyone right who'd said she was just a desperate woman playing at something she didn't understand. Yeah, she said. I can do that. Relief flickered across Cole's face, quickly hidden. Good. Because I think things are about to get worse before they get better. He was right. 3 days later, a lawyer showed up with official documents. Cole read them in silence, his jaw getting tighter with each page, then handed them to Clara without comment. The county was demanding proof of legitimate marriage, not just the certificate, but evidence of an actual shared life. Witnesses to courtship, correspondence between them, anything that showed the relationship existed before the wedding. They had 2 weeks to provide it or face charges of fraud. We can't provide what doesn't exist, Clara said quietly. No, we can't. Cole stared at the papers like they'd personally offended him. This is Reed's doing. He found a judge who will play along, manufactured a legal basis for investigation. It's all theater, but it's theater that could destroy us. So what do? We create the evidence, letters between us dated appropriately. Testimony from people who'll swear they saw us together during the supposed courtship. It's risky, but it's also perjury, forgery, crimes that could land us in jail. Clara felt panic rising. Cole, we can't ask people to lie for us. That's not fair to them. Then what's your suggestion? We just give up? Let Reed win? I don't know. The frustration boiled over, months of tension and fear finding release. I don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to survive this without destroying whatever's left of my life in the process. Cole's expression softened. I know. I'm sorry. This isn't your fight. Not really. It's mine, and I dragged you into it. I chose to be dragged. Still. He was quiet for a moment, then made a decision. There might be another way. I need to make a trip. Could be gone a few days. Trip where? To see some people who might be able to help. Old associates, connections from before I came here. He wouldn't meet her eyes. It's business I've been avoiding dealing with, but if it gets Reed off our backs, it'll be worth it. Clara felt a chill. What kind of business? The kind that's better if you don't know the details. For your own protection. He looked at her seriously. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? It was a hell of a thing to ask. Trust a man she'd known for less than a month, married out of desperation, barely understood. But the alternative was giving up, and that felt worse. How long will you be gone? 3, maybe 4 days. Dutch will be here, and the hands. You'll be safe. That's not what I asked. Cole almost smiled. 3 or 4 days. I'll be back before the deadline, and hopefully with something we can use to make this whole mess go away. And if you don't come back, then you take the money I've got saved. It's in a box under the floorboard in my office. You'll find it, and you get as far from here as you can. Don't look back. Don't feel guilty. Just survive. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Clara? Yeah? Thank you for staying, for fighting, for being tougher than you had any right to be. His voice was rough. Whatever happens, that meant something. Then he was gone, riding out before she could respond, leaving her alone with mounting dread and the terrible certainty that nothing about this situation was going to resolve easily. Dutch found her on the porch an hour later, staring at the empty road Cole had taken. He tell you where he's going? No. He tell you when he's coming back? Few days, he said. Dutch nodded slowly. You know what he's doing, don't you? Why he left now? Clara looked at him. No. Do you? Got my suspicions. Cole's got a past he doesn't talk about. Things from before he came here, people he used to know. Whatever mess he's in with Reed, he's going back to that past to find a way out of it. Dutch leaned against the railing. Question is whether that cure ends up being worse than the disease. Meaning what? Meaning sometimes the things we run from have a way of catching up. And when they do, they don't come alone. He looked at her seriously. You seem like a good woman, Mrs. Mercer. Whatever arrangement you've got with Cole, however you ended up here, you don't deserve to get caught in the crossfire of his old mistakes. Everyone's got old mistakes, Dutch. That's not unique to Cole. True enough, but not everyone's mistakes include the kind of people Cole used to run with. He pushed off the railing. Just keep your eyes open, and if things start going sideways, you get yourself somewhere safe. Loyalty's admirable, but it ain't worth dying for. He left her with that ominous warning, and Clara felt the weight of it settle over her like a shroud. What had Cole gotten her into? What kind of past was he running from, and how bad was it that he'd hidden out here for 12 years trying to escape it? The questions haunted her through the evening and into a sleepless night. She found herself in Cole's office, the one room he'd told her to avoid, staring at the closed door like it might hold answers. She shouldn't go in. It was a violation of the one boundary he'd set, the one piece of privacy he'd asked her to respect. But if he didn't come back, if whatever he was doing got him killed or arrested or worse, she needed to know what she was dealing with. Clara opened the door. The office was sparse but organized. Desk, filing cabinet, a few books on a shelf. She found the floorboard he'd mentioned, pried it up, and discovered the money box. Inside was more cash than she'd expected, enough to start over somewhere new, just like he'd promised. But beneath the money was something else, a stack of papers yellowed with age, letters, documents, what looked like legal records from another territory. Clara pulled them out, held them up to the lamplight, and started reading. What she found made her blood run cold. Cole Mercer wasn't just a rancher with enemies. He was a man running from a past that involved theft, violence, and at least one death that the law had never fully resolved. The documents told a story of a younger man caught up in things that spiraled out of control, who'd made choices that cost lives and destroyed futures. And now she was tied to him, legally and publicly, in a way that made her complicit in whatever came next. Clara sat on the office floor, papers scattered around her, and finally let herself feel the full weight of her situation. She'd married a stranger to survive, and that stranger had secrets dark enough to make her current problems look simple. The smart thing would be to take the money and run. To get out before Cole returned, before his past caught up with him and dragged her down too. But even as she thought it, Clara knew she wouldn't. Not because she was brave or noble or any of the things people might assume, but because she'd meant what she said to Margaret, she was done running. Whatever came next, whoever Cole Mercer really was beneath the careful facade, she'd face it. She'd made her choice, signed her name, tied her fate to his. Now she just had to hope they both survived it. Clara put the papers back exactly as she'd found them, replaced the floorboard, and left Cole's office feeling like she'd swallowed broken glass. Sleep was impossible. She spent the night pacing her room, trying to reconcile the man she'd been living with, hardworking, direct, protecting what was his, with the younger version described in those documents. A man involved in things that got people killed. By morning, she'd made a decision. She needed answers, and the only person who could provide them was Cole himself. But he was gone, and she was left with a ranch full of questions and Dutch watching her like he knew exactly what she'd discovered. The second day without Cole dragged. Clara threw herself into work, mucking stalls and repairing the chicken coop fence until her muscles screamed. Anything to avoid thinking about what she'd read, about what it meant for her future. The hands gave her space, though she caught them exchanging looks when they thought she wasn't watching. It was Sterling who approached her that afternoon, hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Mercer, there's something you should know." Clara straightened from the fence post she'd been setting. "What is it?" "Saw some men this morning, up on the ridge. 3 of them, watching the ranch. They cleared out when they saw me looking, but they'll be back." He shifted his weight. "Figured you should know, with Cole gone and all." "Reed's men?" "Most likely, though could be anyone. Word's gotten around about the land dispute, about the marriage questions. Some folks might see this as a good time to cause trouble." Clara felt ice in her veins. "You think they'd try something? With Cole away?" "I think Reed's the kind of man who takes advantage of opportunities. And Cole being gone is a pretty big opportunity." Sterling met her eyes. "Dutch told us to keep watch, stay armed, just in case. Thank you for letting me know." After he left, Clara went inside and retrieved the rifle. She'd learned to shoot on her father's farm, though she'd never aimed at anything more threatening than coyotes. The weight of the weapon in her hands felt different now, heavier with the possibility of actual violence. Night fell with agonizing slowness. Clara kept the lamps low, moving from window to window, watching for movement in the darkness. Dutch had posted one of the hands as a lookout, but the ranch felt exposed, vulnerable. Every sound made her jump, wind against the shutters, horses shifting in the barn, the creak of old wood settling. She was checking the back door lock for the 3rd time when she heard it. Hoofbeats, coming fast. Clara grabbed the rifle and moved to the front window. Through the glass, she could make out a single rider approaching, pushing his horse hard. Not Cole. The build was wrong. She cocked the rifle, positioned herself behind cover, and waited. The rider pulled up in the yard, dismounted in a stumbling rush. In the moonlight, Clara recognized young Tommy, one of the hands. He ran toward the house, shouting, "Mrs. Mercer, Dutch sent me. We need help." She threw open the door, rifle still raised. "What happened?" "Fire. Someone set the south pasture burning. Dutch and the others are trying to contain it, but it's spreading fast. He needs everyone who can carry water." Tommy was breathing hard, his face smudged with soot. "Please, ma'am, we're losing cattle." Clara didn't hesitate. She grabbed a coat, shoved her feet into boots, and followed Tommy back outside. He'd brought a second horse, one of Cole's, and helped her mount. They rode hard toward the orange glow visible against the night sky. The scene when they arrived was chaos. Flames devoured dry grass, spreading faster than the hands could beat them back. Dutch was directing the effort, his voice hoarse from shouting orders over the roar of fire. Clara dismounted and immediately joined the bucket line, hauling water from the creek to where Sterling and Briggs were trying to create a fire break. The heat was intense, searing her face and hands. Smoke filled her lungs, made her eyes stream. But she kept working, kept moving, because stopping meant losing everything. The cattle had been driven to safety, but the pasture represented months of grazing, of careful management. Losing it would be a financial blow the ranch might not recover from. "It was set deliberately," Dutch shouted to her during a brief pause. "Found oil-soaked rags at 3 different points. Someone wanted to make sure it caught." "Reed?" "Who else?" He coughed, spat black phlegm. "Timing's too perfect. Cole's gone, we're short-handed, and suddenly the pasture goes up in flames. This is a message." They fought the fire for hours. Gradually, through sheer stubborn effort, they managed to contain it, create enough of a break that it burned itself out against cleared ground. By the time the last flames died, dawn was breaking, and Clara felt like she'd been beaten with clubs. Dutch surveyed the damage, his face grim. "Could have been worse. We saved most of the pasture, didn't lose any cattle. But this was a warning shot. Next time might be the barn, or the house." "We need to tell the sheriff," Clara said. "Sheriff's in Reed's pocket, same as half the county officials. We report this, he'll investigate just long enough to declare it an accident, maybe blame our own carelessness. Dutch looked at her seriously. This is Reed showing us he can hurt us whenever he wants, and there's not a damn thing the law will do about it. The unfairness of it burned worse than the fire had. Clara wanted to scream, to ride into town and confront Reed herself. But she was exhausted, filthy, and smart enough to know that rage without a plan was just another way to lose. Get some rest, Dutch told her. You did good tonight. Worked as hard as any of the men. Cole will be proud when he hears about it. Clara nodded, too tired to respond. She rode back to the house alone, watching the sun rise over land that was charred and damaged but still standing. Small victories, she told herself. Take what you can get. She'd just finished washing the soot from her face when she heard another horse. This time her hand went to the rifle before her mind fully registered the sound. But when she looked out, hope surged through her exhaustion. Cole was back. He dismounted stiffly, like he'd been riding for days without rest. His clothes were dusty, face shadowed with stubble, but his eyes went immediately to the smoke still visible from the south pasture. What happened? Clara met him at the door and told him everything, the men on the ridge, the fire, the desperate hours fighting it. Cole's expression grew darker with each word, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Anyone hurt? No, we got lucky, but Dutch thinks it's just the first move. Dutch is right. Cole moved past her into the house, went straight to the kitchen, and poured water from the pitcher with shaking hands. He drank like he'd been wandering the desert, then finally looked at her, really looked. You fought the fire yourself? Everyone did. We didn't have a choice. You could have stayed here. Let the hands handle it. And let them think I'm the kind of person who hides while others risk themselves? No. Clara crossed her arms. I'm part of this ranch now, Cole, for better or worse. That means I show up when things get hard. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, gratitude, maybe something deeper he wasn't ready to name. You're covered in soot. I'll wash again later. Right now I want to know where you've been, what you found, whether this trip of yours accomplished anything. Cole set down the cup, and for a long moment he seemed to be weighing how much to tell her. Finally, he reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope. I went to see some people I used to know. People with connections, resources, and reasons to dislike Harrison Reed as much as I do. What kind of people? The kind who operate outside the law, when the law doesn't serve justice. He handed her the envelope. Open it. Inside were documents, official-looking papers with seals and signatures, along with what appeared to be financial records. Clara scanned them, her eyes widening as she understood what she was seeing. This is proof of fraud. Reed's been manipulating land claims for years, bribing officials, falsifying records. She looked up at Cole. Where did you get this? From someone who used to work for him. Someone he crossed badly enough that they kept insurance in case they ever needed leverage. Cole's smile was grim. Turns out Reed's made a lot of enemies over the years. Some of them are willing to help bring him down. This could destroy him, end the land dispute, possibly get him arrested. That's the idea, but it comes with a cost. Clara's stomach tightened. What cost? The people who gave me this information want something in return. A favor, to be called in at a future date. And the nature of that favor... He paused. Let's just say it won't be anything legal or simple. You made a deal with criminals. I made a deal with people who have their own codes, their own sense of right and wrong. Are they criminals by the law's definition? Probably. But they're also people Reed victimized, and they want revenge as much as justice. Cole moved closer. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but it's the only card we had left to play. Clara looked at the documents again, at the proof that could save the ranch and their false marriage, bought with a promise to unknown people for unknown purposes. Every choice seemed to lead them deeper into moral gray areas, further from any clear sense of right and wrong. If we use this, we're tied to them, to whatever they want from you in the future. I know. And if what they want is something that gets people hurt, then I'll deal with it when the time comes. Cole's voice was steady. But right now our options are limited. We can use this evidence to stop Reed, or we can watch him burn us down piece by piece until there's nothing left to save. It was the same calculation they'd been making since the beginning, practical survival versus moral purity. Clara had learned months ago that purity was a luxury she couldn't afford. The question was how much she was willing to compromise before she lost herself completely. "What do we do with it?" she asked finally. "We give it to a judge who isn't in Reed's pocket. There's one in the territorial capital, a man I'm told can be trusted. He reviews the evidence, issues a stay on Reed's land claim, possibly opens a criminal investigation." Cole's expression was hard. "Reed loses his leverage and we get breathing room to make the marriage look legitimate enough to withstand scrutiny." "Just like that? We hand over some papers and everything gets better?" "I didn't say better. I said breathing room." He ran a hand through his hair. "Reed's not going to go quietly. This will make him desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. The fire tonight proves that, but at least we'll be fighting from a position of strength instead of just waiting for the hammer to fall." Clara thought about the long night fighting flames, about Reed's men watching from the ridge, about all the ways this situation had spiraled beyond anything she could have imagined when she first accepted Cole's proposal. "I went into your office," she said abruptly. Cole went very still. "When?" "After you left. I found the papers under the floorboard, the ones about your past." She met his eyes. "I know about Missouri, about what happened there." The silence stretched between them, heavy with all the things neither had said. Cole's expression was unreadable, carefully controlled. And I think you owe me the truth. Not the version you've been selling to everyone else, but the real story. What you did, why you ran, who you were before you became the man trying to hold on to this ranch." Claire's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "You asked me to trust you. Well, I need to trust the real you, not the edited version." Cole moved to the window, stared out at his damaged land. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough. "I was 26. Angry, reckless, convinced I was smarter than everyone around me. Got involved with a group running a scheme, buying up land claims from desperate people, then flipping them to railroad companies for huge profits. Seemed harmless at the time. We were just middlemen, facilitating transactions. But it wasn't harmless. No. Turned out the leader of the group was falsifying some of the claims, forging signatures, forcing people off their land when they wouldn't sell. By the time I realized how deep the corruption went, I was already implicated, already part of it." Clara waited, letting him tell it at his own pace. "There was a man, a farmer who refused to give up his property. The leader sent some enforcers to convince him. Things got violent. The farmer ended up dead, and his family lost everything." Cole's hands were fists against the window frame. "I didn't pull the trigger, didn't even know it was going to happen. But I'd been part of the machinery that led to it, and that made me complicit." "What did you do?" "I ran. Took what money I'd earned and disappeared west before the law could connect all the pieces. Changed my name. Not legally, just started using my mother's maiden name instead of my father's. Became Cole Mercer instead of..." He paused. "Someone else. Someone I didn't want to be anymore." "And the ranch?" "Was supposed to be a new start. A place where I could work with my hands, build something honest, live quietly enough that my past stayed buried." He turned to face her. "But turns out running doesn't erase what you've done. It just delays the reckoning." Clara processed this, fitting it with the man she'd come to know. "Is Reed part of your past? Is that why he's so determined to take this land?" "No. Reed's just a greedy man who wants what I have. The connection to my past is coincidence, bad timing that the land dispute forced me back into contact with people I'd been avoiding." Cole moved closer. "But you're right to be worried. The people I dealt with to get those documents, they know who I really am. They're part of the same network I ran from 12 years ago. Using their help means exposing myself to potential blackmail, to having my past weaponized against me. Why take that risk? Because losing this ranch means losing the only good thing I've built since Missouri. Because I'm tired of running. And because..." He stopped, seemed to struggle with something. "Because you're here now, and you deserve better than watching everything collapse. Because I was too proud to ask for help from the only people who had it to give." The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Clara felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the careful walls she'd built around this arrangement. "Cole, I'm not asking you to forgive what I did, or to stay if you want to leave. I'm just telling you the truth because you asked for it, and because you've earned it." His eyes were dark, intense. "You want to take the money and go, I'll help you do it safely. No judgment, no hard feelings. But if you stay, you need to know exactly who you're tied to." Clara thought about the man described in those old documents, reckless, complicit in violence, running from consequences. Then she thought about the man standing in front of her now, hardworking, protective, willing to risk everything to keep what he'd built. People could change. She'd changed herself in the months since losing her father's farm, become harder and more desperate, but also stronger. "I'm staying," she said quietly. "Clara, I'm staying because I made a commitment, because this ranch is worth fighting for, and so are you, despite your past." She moved closer. "We're all running from something, Cole. I'm running from the woman who lost everything because she wasn't strong enough to fight back. You're running from the man who made terrible choices and got people killed. Maybe the only way either of us stops running is by standing our ground together." Relief flooded his face, quickly hidden, but visible enough that Clara understood how much her answer had mattered. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive what comes next." "Fair point." He looked at the documents still in her hand. "I'll ride to the Capitol tomorrow, get these to Judge Morrison. Should take 2 days there and back. While I'm gone..." "You're leaving again? After the fire? After everything that happened last night?" "I have to. The deadline for proving our marriage is in 8 days. We need this evidence filed before then, need the legal pressure on Reed to back off." Cole's expression was grim. "I don't like leaving you here, especially after what happened. But Dutch and the hands will watch the place. And you've proven you can handle yourself. What if Reed's men come back? What if they do worse than set a fire? Then you do what you have to do to survive. The rifle's loaded, and you know how to use it. The hands are loyal. They'll protect you." He paused. "I'm trusting you with this ranch, Clara. With everything I've built. Don't think I do that lightly." Despite the fear coiling in her gut, Clara felt a surge of pride. He was treating her like a partner, not a liability, like someone capable of holding the line while he dealt with the larger fight. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't." He left at first light, the documents secured in his saddlebag, after extracting promises from Dutch to keep eyes on the ranch at all times. Clara watched him ride away, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders like a heavy coat. The next 2 days were tense. Clara worked alongside the hands, helping repair damage from the fire and fortify the ranch against potential attacks. Dutch taught her how to post a proper watch, where the sightlines were best, which approaches an enemy might use. It felt surreal, preparing for violence on land that should have been peaceful. On the second night, the attack came. Clara woke to the sound of breaking glass. She grabbed the rifle and rolled out of bed, her heart hammering. Smoke was already curling under her door. Fire again. But this time inside the house. She threw open the door to find the hallway filling with smoke. Flames were climbing the stairs from below, moving fast. Someone had thrown burning bottles through the windows, turning the first floor into an inferno. Clara didn't panic. Panic got you killed. She soaked a cloth in the water pitcher, held it over her mouth and nose, and moved toward the back stairs. The smoke was thick, disorienting, but she knew this house now, could navigate by feel. She made it down and out the back door just as the front of the house fully caught. In the yard, chaos reigned. Dutch and the hands were running toward the house with water, but it was already too late. The fire was too big, spreading too fast. "Mrs. Mercer!" Dutch grabbed her arm. "Are you hurt?" "No, but the house is lost. Nothing we can do now but keep it from spreading to the barn." His face was black with soot, furious. "I saw them. 3 men on horseback, riding away toward the east. Reed's people, no question." Clara watched Cole's house burn, feeling rage and helplessness in equal measure. Everything inside, furniture, clothes, the careful life he'd built, was being destroyed. And there was nothing she could do but stand there and watch. They saved the barn and the outbuildings, but the house was gutted. By morning, only the stone chimney and parts of the frame remained standing, everything else reduced to smoking ruins. Sterling found something in the debris that made Clara's blood run cold, a bottle that hadn't broken, still partially filled with oil, and tied to it a note written in crude letters, "Leave now or burn with it." Dutch read it, then handed it to Clara without comment. The threat was clear. Reed wasn't playing legal games anymore. He'd escalated to attempted murder, and the only reason Clara wasn't dead was luck and quick thinking. "We need to report this," she said. "To who? The sheriff who works for Reed? He'll call it an accident, blame us for not maintaining our lamps properly." Dutch's voice was bitter. This is frontier justice, Mrs. Mercer. We're on our own. Then we fight back. Against what? Reed's got money men, the law in his pocket. We're 5 ranch hands and a woman standing in the ashes of our employer's house. He looked at her seriously. Maybe it's time to consider that this fight can't be won. No. Clara's voice was hard. We don't give up. Cole's getting the evidence to the judge right now. Once that's filed, Reed loses his leverage. We just have to hold out a little longer. And if Cole doesn't make it back? If Reed's people caught him on the road? If something went wrong? Clara refused to consider it. He'll make it back. And when he does, we're going to make Reed pay for every bit of this. Dutch studied her face, then nodded slowly. All right, then we fortify what's left, post guards around the clock, and wait for Cole to return with whatever miracle he's gone chasing. But Mrs. Mercer, if they come again, if they come in force, we might not be able to stop them. Then we make them pay in blood for every inch they take. The words came out harder than she'd intended, surprising even herself. But standing in the ruins of Cole's house, holding a death threat written by men who'd tried to burn her alive, Clara felt something crystallize inside her. She was done being pushed, done being the victim. If Reed wanted a war, she'd give him one. The hands dispersed to their duties, and Clara stood alone in the ashes, watching the sun rise over the devastation. Somewhere out there, Cole was riding toward the capital with documents that might save them. And here, she was holding down a position that might not exist by the time he returned. But she'd made her choice, signed her name, tied her fate to his, promised to see this through. Now all she could do was survive long enough to find out if that promise had been worth making. Cole returned on the 3rd day to find his house reduced to a blackened skeleton and Clara standing armed guard in front of the barn with a determination that would have been admirable if it hadn't been so terrifying. He dismounted slowly, taking in the destruction, and Clara saw something break behind his eyes. Not despair, that would have been easier. This was colder, more dangerous. The look of a man who'd been pushed past the point where restraint mattered. Tell me, he said quietly. She told him everything. The attack, the fire bottles, the threat, how close she'd come to dying in the flames, how they'd barely saved the outbuildings. Cole listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each word. When she finished, he pulled the death threat from her hand and read it. Then, very deliberately, he tore it into pieces and let the wind scatter them across the scorched ground. Did you file the documents? Clara asked. I did. Judge Morrison accepted them, said he'd review and issue a preliminary ruling within 48 hours. Should be enough to halt Reed's land claim, possibly trigger a criminal investigation. Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. But that was before he tried to murder my wife. Now I don't think I'm willing to wait for the law. Cole? He crossed a line, Clara. Burning crops, stealing cattle, legal harassment. That's business. Throwing fire through windows while you're sleeping inside? That's attempted murder, and I'm not the kind of man who lets that slide. Clara had never seen him like this. The careful control, the measured responses, all of it was gone, burned away along with his house. What remained was the younger man from those documents, the one capable of violence when pushed. What are you planning? I'm planning to make Reed understand what happens when you escalate beyond law and reason. When you try to kill someone I'm supposed to protect. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. You could have died. While I was gone, chasing legal solutions that moved too slow to matter, you could have burned to death in my house. But I didn't. I'm fine. This time. What about next time? What about when they come back with more men, more fire, more willingness to do whatever it takes? His hands were shaking now, fury barely contained. I won't lose this ranch, and I won't lose you in the process of trying to save it. The last sentence hung between them, significant in ways neither was ready to examine. Clara pushed past it, focused on the immediate problem. So what do we do? We end this. Tonight. Dutch appeared from the barn, Sterling and Briggs behind him. They'd clearly heard the conversation, and their faces showed they were ready for whatever came next. Violence had been building toward this moment since the first fire, since Fletcher's threats, since every small escalation that brought them closer to a reckoning. What's the plan? Dutch asked. Cole's smile was dangerous. Reed operates from his estate, surrounded by paid enforcers and enough security that a direct assault would be suicide. But he's also arrogant, Believes his money and connections make him untouchable. We use that against him. How? The old mine up in the northern hills, the one where the previous owner's wife died. It's on disputed territory between my land and Reed's claim. There's something there Reed wants, something valuable enough that he's been trying to get access to it for years. Cole pulled out a map from his saddlebag, spread it on the ground. Mineral rights. The original survey shows silver deposits, possibly gold. That's the real reason Reed wants this property. The grazing land is just a bonus. Clara stared at the map. How do you know this? Because the man who sold me the ranch told me before he left. Said Reed had tried to buy just the mineral rights, offered huge money for them. But they're tied to the land ownership. You can't separate them legally. So Reed's been trying to get the whole property ever since. And you've been sitting on this information for 12 years? I've been protecting it. Those mineral rights are what keep this place valuable, what make it worth fighting for. Cole looked up at Dutch. We're going to make Reed think I'm willing to negotiate, that losing the house broke me, made me desperate enough to deal. I'll send word that I want to meet at the mine tomorrow night, neutral ground, to discuss selling him the mineral rights separately. He'll know it's a trap, Clara said. He'll suspect, but his greed will override his caution. The chance to get what he's wanted for over a decade without the messy legal fight? He'll come. And he'll bring his enforcers because he's not stupid, but he'll come. Dutch was studying the map. You're planning to ambush them at the mine. I'm planning to get evidence. Reed admitting to the arson, the attacks, everything he's done, with witnesses present and testimony that can't be dismissed. Cole's expression was grim. And if things go wrong, if it turns violent, we'll be in a defensive position with the high ground. It was risky, borderline insane. But Clara understood the logic. They couldn't keep defending against Reed's attacks forever. Eventually, they'd lose through attrition, through exhaustion, through one unlucky break. Better to force a confrontation on their terms, in a place where they had advantages. I'm coming with you, she said. No. Yes. You said I'm supposed to be your wife. Well, a wife doesn't send her husband into danger alone. Clara met his eyes. Besides, you'll need someone Reed doesn't expect. Someone who can get close while his attention is on you and the hands. She's right, Dutch said. Reed's men won't see her as a threat. That gives us an advantage. Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but practicality won out. Fine, but you stay back unless things go bad. This is about getting evidence and forcing Reed's hand, not starting a war. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Cole sent a message to Reed through one of the ranch hands who sometimes did work for both properties, a carefully worded proposal for a midnight meeting at the old mine to discuss terms. The bait was cast. Now they waited to see if Reed would bite. The answer came at dusk. A rider delivered a note written in Reed's own hand. Midnight. Come alone or don't come at all. He's coming, Cole said, reading it. And he'll bring men despite telling me to come alone, probably planning his own ambush. Then we'd better be ready for it. They rode out 2 hours before midnight, taking a circuitous route to the mine that kept them off the main roads. The old structure loomed against the starlit sky, a monument to abandoned dreams and the woman who died there. Clara felt the weight of that history as they approached, the reminder that this land had taken blood before and might again. Cole positioned them carefully. Dutch and Sterling on the high ground with rifles, Briggs watching the rear approach, and Clara hidden in the rocks near the mine entrance where she could hear everything but remain unseen. Cole would be in the open, the apparent target, drawing Reed into position. They didn't have to wait long. Reed arrived with 4 men, all armed, all scanning the darkness for signs of trap. But Cole had chosen the location well. The terrain made it nearly impossible to approach unseen from most angles, and the positions they'd taken gave them clear lines of sight. Reed dismounted, his men forming a protective semicircle around him. Even in the moonlight, Claire could see the arrogance in his bearing, the confidence of a man who'd never really been challenged. Mercer, Reed called out. I'm here. Show yourself. Cole stepped into the open, hands visible, unarmed. I'm here, alone, like you asked. I doubt that. You're many things, Cole, but stupid isn't one of them. Reed moved closer, his men following. Though I suppose desperation makes fools of us all. I heard about your house, terrible tragedy. Some might say careless handling of lamps, others might suspect arson. Hard to prove either way. Cut the act, Harrison. We both know you ordered it. Do we? I think you'd have a hard time proving that in court, just like you'd have a hard time proving I had anything to do with the cattle theft, or the pasture fire, or any of the unfortunate incidents that have plagued your property recently. Reed's smile was sharp. But I'm a reasonable man. You want to sell me the mineral rights? I'm prepared to make you an offer, generous considering your current circumstances. I don't want your money. I want you to leave my land alone. Leave my wife alone. Leave everything I've built alone and find someone else to victimize. That's not how this works. You have something I want, and I've been patient long enough. The mineral rights are mine, one way or another. You can take payment for them, or you can lose everything and get nothing. Your choice. Clara watched from her hiding place, every muscle tense. She could see Cole's hands were clenched, his entire body radiating barely controlled fury. This was the moment. Reed was confident, talking freely, thinking he held all the power. And if I refuse? Cole asked. Then the next fire won't just be your house. It'll be the barn with your wife inside. Or maybe she'll have an accident on the road to town. Tragic, really, how dangerous the frontier can be for women traveling alone. Reed stepped closer. I don't want to hurt anyone, Cole. I'm a businessman. But I will remove obstacles that stand between me and what I want. You should have learned that by now. I learned something else. I learned that men like you only understand one language. Cole's voice was cold. Force, Reed laughed. You're outnumbered and outgunned. What force do you think you... The gunshot cracked through the night, and one of Reed's men dropped, screaming and clutching his leg. Dutch's warning shot from the high ground. Tell your men to put down their weapons, Cole said quietly, or the next shot won't be a warning. Reed's expression transformed from smug to furious. You dare! I dare! And I've got witnesses in position who heard you admit to arson and threats of murder. That's enough to bring you down, Harrison. More than enough. Witnesses? The word of a few ranch hands against mine, against my lawyers and bought judges? Reed gestured to his men. Kill him. Everything happened at once. Reed's men went for their weapons. Dutch and Sterling opened fire from above, and Clara stepped out of hiding with her rifle raised. But Reed had been more prepared than they'd anticipated. Two more of his men emerged from the mine entrance behind Cole, cutting off his retreat. Cole dove for cover as bullets started flying. Clara fired at the men coming from the mine, saw one go down, but the other returned fire and she had to drop behind the rocks. The night exploded into chaos and gunfire, the careful plan disintegrating into pure survival. Cole! Clara shouted, but couldn't see him through the smoke and darkness. Reed was moving toward the mine entrance, using the confusion to escape. Clara made a split-second decision and went after him. If he got away, if he managed to claim this was all a misunderstanding, they'd have nothing. Every risk would be for nothing. She caught up to him at the mouth of the mine, grabbed his arm. Reed spun, faster than she'd expected for a man his age, and backhanded her hard enough that stars exploded across her vision. She fell, losing her grip on the rifle. Stupid girl, Reed snarled. You should have taken Margaret's offer. Should have run when you had the chance. He pulled a pistol, aimed it at her face. Clara's mind went blank with terror, unable to move, unable to breathe. This was it. She'd gambled everything and lost. The shot didn't come from Reed's gun. Cole tackled him from the side, and they went down in a tangle of limbs. The pistol discharged harmlessly into the dirt. They fought viciously, no technique or grace, just brutal desperation. Reed was older but fought like a cornered animal, and Cole was injured. Clara could see blood on his shoulder. She scrambled for the dropped pistol, her hand shaking. The mine shaft was behind them, old and unstable, timbers rotting and ready to collapse. In their struggle, they were getting dangerously close to the edge where the floor gave way to darkness. Stop! Clara aimed the pistol at both of them, not sure she could shoot even if she had to. Both of you, stop! Reed used Cole's momentary distraction to throw him off, then lunged at Clara. She fired without thinking, the recoil jarring her arms. The bullet caught Reed in the side, spun him around. He stumbled backward, hit the rotting boards at the mine entrance, and the floor gave way beneath him. He dropped into the shaft with a scream that cut off abruptly. Silence fell, broken only by the distant sound of gunfire still echoing from outside. Cole pulled himself up, bleeding but alive, and looked at Clara with something like awe. You shot him. I didn't mean to, She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't process what had just happened. Cole moved to the shaft edge, looked down into darkness. He's alive. Barely. Wedged about 20 feet down. He turned to Clara. We need to get him out. Need him alive to testify. But even as he said it, there was a deep groan from within the mine. The timbers were giving way, destabilized by Reed's fall and the vibrations from the gunfight. The entire structure was collapsing. We have to go. Now! Cole grabbed Clara's hand and they ran. Behind them, the mine entrance caved in with a thunderous roar, sealing Reed inside along with whatever testimony he might have given. They made it to the rocks and dropped, covering their heads as debris rained down. When the dust settled, the mine was gone, just rubble and broken timber marking where it had stood. The gunfire had stopped. Dutch and the others emerged from their positions, and Clara saw that Reed's men were either down or surrendering. It was over. But at what cost? The sheriff arrived at dawn with a full posse, summoned by someone in town who'd heard the gunfire. But the situation he found wasn't what he'd expected. Reed's surviving men, terrified and eager to save themselves, immediately started talking. They confessed to the arson, the attacks, everything Reed had ordered them to do. And when the sheriff's men excavated the mine entrance looking for Reed, they found something else. Old records Reed had hidden there documenting years of fraud and illegal land manipulation. The irony wasn't lost on Clara. Reed had been using the mine as a hiding place for evidence of his crimes, and in trying to escape justice, he'd led them directly to proof of everything he'd done. They pulled Reed's body out 3 days later. The fall had broken his neck. According to the law, it was death by misadventure, a man fleeing justice who fell into a shaft weakened by his own criminal conspiracy, self-inflicted in the most literal sense. Clara should have felt guilty, should have been haunted by the image of Reed falling, by the sound of the gunshot she'd fired. But mostly, she just felt tired, and relieved that it was over. Judge Morrison's ruling came the following week. Based on the evidence Cole had provided, plus the confessions from Reed's men, he issued a permanent stay on the land seizure and ordered a full investigation into Reed's business practices. The ranch was secure, legally and irrevocably. The marriage was validated by the court, deemed legitimate in light of the circumstances and the obvious commitment both parties had shown to making it work. They'd won. At tremendous cost, but they'd won. The rebuilding started immediately. Cole used the money he'd saved plus compensation from Reed's estate, seized by the court pending resolution of his fraud cases, to begin construction on a new house. Smaller than the original, more practical, but solid. Clara worked alongside the builders, learning carpentry and masonry, contributing to the creation of something that felt less like Cole's house and more like theirs. It was during one of those long afternoons, both of them covered in sawdust and exhausted, that Cole finally said what had been building between them for weeks. The arrangement's over. Legally, the marriage is real, but you're not obligated to stay. You've fulfilled your part. I'll give you the money I promised, and if you want to leave, I won't stop you. Clara set down her hammer, looked at him. Do you want me to leave? I want you to choose freely, not because you're trapped by an arrangement made in desperation, not because you feel obligated or grateful. If you stay, I want it to be because you actually want to be here. She'd been expecting this conversation, had rehearsed various responses in her head, but now that the moment had arrived, she found the truth was simpler than any practiced speech. I'm not the same person who walked up this drive starving and desperate. That woman was broken, defeated, running from everything she'd lost. But somewhere along the way, standing next to you, fighting for this place, I found something I didn't know I was looking for. What's that? Purpose, belonging, the feeling that I'm not just surviving but actually building towards something that matters. Clara moved closer. This ranch stopped being your dream and became ours the night I fought that fire. Maybe before that. And you stopped being a stranger I married out of convenience the moment you trusted me enough to tell me the truth about your past. Cole's expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the hope beneath it. So you're staying? I'm staying. Not because of the arrangement or the money or because I don't have anywhere else to go. I'm staying because this is home now. And because you're my husband, not just on paper, but in all the ways that actually matter. She paused. Unless you want me to go. Unless this was always just business for you. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, pulled her into a kiss that was nothing like the chase contact they'd shared for appearances. This was real, raw, months of tension and fear and partnership finding release. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole's smile was genuine for the first time since she'd met him. "Definitely not just business," he said. "Good, because I've gotten attached to this place. And to you. In that order, mostly." He laughed, and it transformed his whole face. "I'll take what I can get." They finished the house by early fall, and it was better than what had been lost. Not bigger or fancier, but built by their hands together, shaped by their shared vision of what a home should be. Clara planted a garden that first autumn, preparing for spring. Cole bought new cattle with money from Reed's seized estate, began rebuilding the herd. Dutch stayed on as foreman, respect replacing the suspicion he'd shown at the beginning. The other hands either stayed or moved on, but new ones arrived, drawn by the ranch's growing reputation. Life settled into rhythms that felt earned rather than inherited. Hard work, simple pleasures, the satisfaction of building something that lasted. Clara learned that happiness wasn't the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose, and that love didn't always announce itself with poetry and grand gestures. Sometimes it grew quietly in the spaces between crisis, in the daily choosing to stand beside someone through whatever came. 6 months after Reed's death, Margaret Lawson showed up unannounced with a peace offering, 3 breeding heifers, and an admission that she'd underestimated Clara from the beginning. "I was wrong about you," Margaret said as they sat on the porch of the new house. "Thought you were just another desperate woman who'd run when things got hard. Should have known better, should have recognized someone with spine. I almost did run, more than once. But you didn't. That's what matters." Margaret took a sip of the coffee Clara had offered, looked out at the ranch with something like approval. "Cole's lucky. This place is better with you in it." "We're both lucky. We found each other when we needed it most." And turned a marriage of convenience into something real. People will talk about this for years, you know. The woman who married a stranger to save his ranch and ended up saving herself in the process. Clara smiled. "Let them talk. We've got better things to do than worry about stories." After Margaret left, Cole found Clara in the garden, pulling weeds and planning next season's planting. He sat beside her, comfortable in the silence they'd learned to share. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is from a year ago. How I thought I'd lost everything, but I was just losing the wrong things to make room for the right ones." She looked at him. "Does that sound naive?" "No, it sounds like someone who's earned the right to believe in second chances." He took her dirt-stained hand in his. "We both have." The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The ranch spread out around them, scarred by fire and struggle but still standing, still theirs. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully. The new house stood solid behind them. And between Clara and Cole, there was an understanding that needed no words, that they'd been forged by crisis into something stronger than either had been alone. Some people believed the land was cursed, that tragedy followed anyone who tried to build a life there. Clara knew better now. The land was just land. What mattered was the people on it, the choices they made, the lines they drew about what was worth defending. She and Cole had drawn those lines in blood and ash, had stood their ground when every rational voice said to run, and they'd won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but decisively. The ranch was theirs, the marriage was real, and the future stretched out before them full of possibility instead of dread. "I was thinking," Cole said into the comfortable quiet, "we should probably make this official. Have a real wedding, invite people, do it properly instead of the hasty ceremony we threw together." Clara considered it, then shook her head. "No. That ceremony was real. It was desperate and rushed and born out of necessity, but it was real. Every promise we made, we've kept. I don't need witnesses or celebration to validate what we built together." "You sure?" "I'm sure. Though if you want to get me a ring that isn't borrowed from your mother's jewelry box, I wouldn't complain." He pulled her close, and they sat together watching the day end and night begin. Somewhere in town, people were probably still talking about them, still doubting the validity of their marriage or questioning the circumstances that brought them together. Clara didn't care. Let them talk. Let them wonder. The only truth that mattered was the one they'd carved out for themselves through fire and blood and sheer, stubborn refusal to surrender. They'd started as strangers with nothing but desperation in common. They'd become partners through necessity, then allies through shared struggle. And finally, somewhere along the way, they'd become what the marriage certificate had claimed from the beginning: husband and wife, not just in name, but in every way that counted. The frontier had tried to break them both, had taken everything they'd built before and reduced it to ash. But from those ashes, they'd created something new, something that couldn't be taken or burned or destroyed by powerful men with money and connections. They'd created a home, together. And that, Clara thought as she leaned against Cole's shoulder under a sky full of stars, was worth every risk they'd taken to get there. Worth the fear and the pain and the moments when failure seemed inevitable. Because the alternative, walking away, surrendering, letting circumstances dictate the shape of their lives, that would have been the real tragedy. In the end, survival wasn't about avoiding struggle. It was about choosing which battles to fight and who to fight them alongside. Clara had chosen this man, this land, this life. And every day she woke up beside him in the house they'd built together was proof that sometimes the most desperate gambles paid off in ways you never expected. The frontier was harsh, unforgiving, built on the bones of people who'd tried and failed to tame it. But it was also a place where you could reinvent yourself, where past mistakes didn't have to define your future, where two broken people could find each other and build something whole. That was the real lesson she'd learned. Not that love conquered all, or that persistence guaranteed success, but that sometimes, when you had nothing left to lose, the riskiest choice was also the one that led to everything worth having. And that home wasn't a place you inherited or stumbled upon. It was something you fought for, bled for, built with your own hands alongside someone willing to fight just as hard. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggle and triumph. But here, on this small piece of land hard-won from men who thought power meant ownership, Clara and Cole had claimed something that transcended law or custom. They'd claimed each other, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.